What if I told you the real secret to transforming your life doesn't come from a massive leap, but from a tiny, almost invisible step? We live in a world obsessed with big changes. Overnight success. Radical transformations. The 30 days to a new you promise. We're told that unless we make massive, dramatic shifts, nothing will change. But here's the truth, those giant leaps? They're rare, they're overwhelming, and most of the time, they fail. Real transformation, lasting transformation, doesn't come from one big decision. It comes from the smallest choices you make daily. The habits you repeat when nobody's watching. The quiet discipline that compounds over time. In this video, I'm going to show you how tiny, consistent actions are the hidden power behind every major success. We'll explore the science of why this works, real-life stories that prove it, and practical steps you can start today. By the end, you'll see that you don't need to wait for the perfect moment, or summon massive motivation, or turn your life upside down. You only need one thing, the power of small, consistent actions. Introduction, the big idea. Think about this, a single drop of water seems meaningless. But let those drops fall, again and again, day after day, and over years, that water can carve through stone. Or think about money. Saving $1 doesn't change your life. But saving $1 every day? That's $365 in a year. Invested wisely, compounded, it could become thousands over a lifetime. This is the power of small, consistent actions. But here's the problem. Most people don't believe in small steps. We're wired to crave instant results. We want to look in the mirror and see muscles tomorrow. We want to post one video and go viral instantly. We want to meditate once and feel enlightened forever. When results don't come fast, we give up. We think, it's not working. But that's because we're looking in the wrong place. Transformation isn't in the immediate result, it's in the compounding effect of your actions. James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, explains it this way: habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Just like money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. So the real game changer isn't intensity, it's consistency. Not giant leaps, but steady steps. And the math is mind-blowing. The compound effect unveiled. Let me show you something simple but profound. If you get just 1% better every day, just a little, by the end of 1 year, you're not 365% better. You're 37 times better. That's the power of compounding. Here's how it works. Imagine two people. Person A decides to improve their life by just 1% daily. Maybe they read 10 pages of a book, do 10 push-ups, save $5, or meditate for 2 minutes. Person B decides it's too small to matter, so they do nothing. On day 1, the difference between them is almost invisible. By day 30, Person A feels a little sharper, fitter, calmer. By day 90, the gap is noticeable. By day 365, Person A has transformed, 37 times stronger, smarter, wealthier, more focused. Person B? They're in the same spot they started. And here's the kicker, the compounding works the other way too. If you get 1% worse every day, eat a little worse, procrastinate a little more, neglect your habits, after a year, you don't just stay the same. You're near zero. Small actions matter. Small actions stack. Small actions decide your destiny. Let me give you some real-world examples. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men alive, didn't become wealthy through lottery wins or sudden windfalls. He became wealthy by investing consistently, compounding his money year after year. He started young, stayed patient, and let the math work for him. Kobe Bryant, one of the greatest basketball players in history, wasn't just talented. He was known for his insane consistency. He practiced daily, shooting thousands of shots, even when nobody watched. Those small, repeated actions built his legendary skill. Language learners know this too. Studying 10 minutes a day feels small. But after a year, you've logged 60 hours. That's enough to carry conversations in a new language, without ever cramming. The world celebrates the results, but what they don't see are the countless small steps behind the scenes. Now, let's break it down even further. Why do big goals often fail? Because they feel overwhelming. You think, I want to lose 30 pounds. Sounds impossible. But if you say, I'll walk 10 minutes today, it feels doable. That's the trick. Big goals overwhelm. Small actions empower. Think of it like eating an elephant. You can't swallow it whole. But one bite at a time, over days, weeks, months, you finish it. Another way to see it is with this metaphor: imagine an airplane. If it changes its route by just 1 degree, you don't notice much at first. But fly across the world, and that 1 degree shift takes you to a completely different continent. Small shifts, over time, create massive change. Let me challenge you right now. Pick one area of your life you want to improve. Health? Money? Relationships? Mindset? Now ask yourself, what's one small step, so small it feels almost silly, that you can start today? Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. Maybe it's drinking 1 extra glass of water. Writing 1 sentence in your journal. Doing 2 push-ups. Reading 1 page. Sending 1 kind message. It might feel insignificant. But that's the whole point. The small steps don't just add up, they multiply. By the end of this video, you'll understand how to build these small actions into your life, how to overcome resistance, and how to keep going long enough to see the results explode. Because the truth is this: success is not built in one day. But it is built daily. You know, one of the biggest reasons people struggle with change isn't that they don't know what to do. Most of the time, we already know the actions that could move our lives forward. We know we should exercise more, save a little money, read that book, or make that call. The problem isn't knowledge, the problem is resistance. That invisible wall between intention and action. And the funny thing is, that resistance usually shows up most when the action is smallest. Isn't that strange? You'd think tiny steps would be the easiest. But sometimes, it's harder to do 2 push-ups than to imagine running a marathon. It's harder to drink 1 extra glass of water than to fantasize about being in the best shape of your life. Why? Because the mind plays tricks. It whispers, this isn't enough. What's the point? You'll never change with something so small. This is what I call the all-or-nothing trap. We've been conditioned to believe that transformation must be dramatic, that success comes only through giant leaps, massive motivation, or a once-in-a-lifetime breakthrough. So when we can't muster up that kind of energy, we default to nothing at all. Have you ever told yourself, if I can't go to the gym for an hour, why bother going for 10 minutes? Or, if I can't write a whole chapter, why bother writing a single paragraph? That's the all-or-nothing fallacy. And it keeps millions of people stuck. But think about this: if you walk just 10 minutes every day, that's over 60 hours of walking in a year. If you read just 5 pages a day, that's 1,800 pages in a year, more than many people read in a decade. If you save just $5 a day, that's nearly $2,000 in a year, and with compound interest, it grows even more. So the truth is, the small never stays small. It stacks. It compounds. But the nothing? That multiplies too. Every time you choose nothing, you strengthen the identity of someone who doesn't act. And over time, that weighs heavier than we realize. Here's the good news: once you see this trap, you can break it. You no longer have to wait for perfect conditions or massive bursts of motivation. You just need to act, no matter how small. Because progress, no matter how tiny, is infinitely better than perfection that never arrives. Now let's talk about another force that holds us back: instant gratification. Let's be honest, we live in a world that's designed to train us for short-term dopamine hits. Social media notifications, fast food, binge watching, all of it gives quick rewards. Our brains are wired to chase the immediate feel-good instead of investing in long-term gains. That's why saving money feels harder than spending it. That's why exercising feels harder than scrolling. Because one requires effort now for a reward later, while the other gives you a reward right away with almost no effort. But here's the secret: your brain can be trained. You can shift from craving only instant wins to actually finding joy in delayed rewards. Think about athletes: they don't see every workout as suffering. Over time, they learn to love the process. Writers, too. At first, writing a page feels like pulling teeth, but once they build the habit, the act itself becomes rewarding. The same can happen to you. The key is pairing small actions with immediate cues of satisfaction, so your brain starts to crave them instead of resist them. For example, say you want to start flossing. Instead of seeing it as a boring chore, stack it with something pleasant. Maybe you play your favorite song while you floss. Or you put a sticker on a calendar every day you do it. Suddenly, your brain gets a little dopamine hit, not just from finishing the flossing, but from the positive cue you've paired with it. And that's how delayed rewards start to feel rewarding in the present. This is where habit stacking comes in. It's one of the most powerful ways to overcome procrastination. Instead of forcing yourself to carve out new time and energy for a habit, you attach it to something you already do. Want to start journaling? Do it right after you brush your teeth. Want to stretch? Do it right after you make your morning coffee. Want to practice gratitude? Do it as soon as you sit down to dinner. By linking a new action to an old one, you reduce resistance. You don't have to think about when or how. It just flows naturally out of something you already do without fail. And let me tell you, this method works wonders for breaking the procrastination cycle. Because procrastination usually thrives on decision fatigue. We waste energy deciding when to start, how to start, or whether we're ready. Habit stacking removes those questions. There's no decision. There's just a trigger, and then the action. But stacking alone isn't enough, you also need to design your environment. Most people underestimate how powerful their environment is in shaping their behavior. If your phone is full of distracting apps, you'll keep scrolling. If your pantry is filled with junk food, you'll keep snacking. If your workspace is cluttered, you'll keep avoiding. Willpower isn't the problem, the setup is. So design your environment to make the right action easy and the wrong action hard. Want to drink more water? Keep a glass of water on your desk. Want to read more? Put a book on your pillow so you can't go to bed without seeing it. Want to eat healthier? Put fruit on the counter and hide the cookies in the back of the cupboard. Tiny changes in environment create massive changes in behavior, because you're no longer fighting temptation, you're steering it. Think of it like this: if you were standing on top of a hill holding a ball, you don't push the ball uphill to get it moving, you set it down in the right direction and gravity does the rest. That's what designing your environment does. It makes your desired habits the path of least resistance, so you don't have to fight yourself every step of the way. Now, let's bring this together. Imagine two people, both wanting to get fit. The first person says, I'm going to wait until I can commit to an intense program. I'll start when I have more time, more energy, and the perfect plan. Weeks pass. Months pass. Nothing changes. The second person says, I'll start by walking for 10 minutes a day, right after lunch. They keep water in their car. They put their running shoes by the door. They stack the walk onto something they already do. Fast forward 6 months. Who do you think is healthier? It's not the one who waited for perfect conditions. It's the one who started small and built momentum. And that's the real truth about friction. The reason small steps feel hard isn't because they're hard, it's because our mind resists them by telling us they don't matter. But once you rewire your brain through habit stacking, environmental design, and celebrating tiny wins, that friction melts away. Suddenly, the small step feels natural. It feels obvious. And then it becomes automatic. So let me leave you with this thought: you don't need a giant leap to start changing your life. You just need to stop believing the lies your mind tells you, that small steps don't count, that you'll start when you're ready, that it's all or nothing. The truth is, you don't need ready. You need real. You don't need all. You need something. And once you do something, the next something comes easier. And then the next. Until one day you look back and realize, you're living in the very reality you thought was impossible. And all it took was choosing to take the smallest step, again and again, until it carried you further than you could ever imagine. If you've ever felt like you keep starting over, like you make progress for a while and then lose it, the problem usually isn't discipline or motivation, it's not having a clear blueprint. Think of a house. If you were building one, you wouldn't just grab bricks and start stacking them randomly. You'd have a plan, a structure, a sequence. But most people approach their dreams like the brick stacking method. They just throw effort at it, hope for the best, and wonder why it falls apart. That's why we need to design a blueprint, and the first step is identifying what I call keystone habits. Keystone habits are the small, simple actions that unlock a chain reaction of positive changes. They're like dominoes, push one over, and it knocks down a whole line behind it. But not all habits are created equal. Some give you a small return, others give you massive ripple effects. The key is to find the ones that, when you do them, make everything else easier. Take exercise, for example. When someone starts exercising consistently, they don't just get stronger physically. They often start eating better. They sleep better. Their mood improves. Their confidence rises. And all of that spills over into their work, their relationships, their decision-making. Exercise is a keystone habit because its benefits don't stay in one lane, they spread into multiple areas of life. Another powerful keystone habit is journaling. It doesn't seem like much, just writing down your thoughts. But journaling creates clarity. Clarity leads to better choices. Better choices lead to better actions. And better actions create better outcomes. Over time, the simple act of putting pen to paper transforms not just how you think, but how you live. Even something as small as making your bed in the morning can be a keystone habit. It's not about the bed, it's about priming your brain with an early win. That small victory sets the tone for the day, proving to yourself that you're capable, organized, and in control. And when you start the day with that momentum, you're more likely to carry it into bigger tasks. So here's the first part of your blueprint. Don't try to overhaul everything. Find 2 or 3 keystone habits that naturally create ripple effects. They'll do most of the heavy lifting for you. And once those are in place, you'll notice other positive habits falling into line almost effortlessly. Now, let's talk about the second piece of your blueprint, goal decomposition. Most people fail not because their goals are too big, but because they try to tackle them all at once. Imagine standing at the bottom of a mountain and looking up at the peak. If you keep staring at how far away the top is, you'll feel overwhelmed before you even take a step. That's what happens when we only think in terms of giant goals. They're so intimidating, so distant, that the brain looks for excuses not to start. But what if instead of staring at the mountain, you focused only on the next step? That's goal decomposition, breaking down huge aspirations into small, daily actions that feel manageable. You don't climb a mountain by leaping to the top. You climb it by taking one step, then another, then another. For example, let's say your goal is to write a book. If you frame the goal as write a book, it feels enormous. But if you break it down into write 300 words a day, suddenly it feels doable. In a year, those 300 daily words turn into over 100,000, enough for a full novel. The mountain was climbed, one small, consistent step at a time. Or let's say your goal is to save $10,000. If you focus only on the $10,000, it feels daunting. But if you break it into save $27 a day, it becomes approachable. You can start with something as small as skipping a daily coffee or eating at home instead of going out. Suddenly the impossible becomes possible, not by doing it all at once, but by decomposing it into tiny, repeatable actions. And here's where most people miss the point. The act of decomposition doesn't just make goals smaller, it makes them stickier. The brain actually loves checking boxes. When you set a daily target that you can cross off, you get a dopamine hit. That little spark of reward keeps you coming back for more. Over time, those daily checkmarks build momentum, and momentum builds identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who wants to achieve the goal and start seeing yourself as someone who lives the process every day. But even with keystone habits and goal decomposition, you still need one more piece to lock in the blueprint: tracking progress. Without tracking, progress becomes invisible. And when progress is invisible, motivation evaporates. Think about it. Have you ever worked hard on something but felt discouraged because you couldn't tell if you were actually moving forward? That's the danger of not tracking. The brain needs feedback. It needs evidence that the effort is working. The good news is, tracking doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, the simpler, the better. One of the most powerful tracking systems is the don't break the chain method. You take a calendar, and every day you complete your habit, you put an X on the date. Day by day, the chain grows. And once you see that chain, you'll feel a strong desire not to break it. That visual streak becomes motivation in itself. Another great method is habit journals. Write down your daily actions and how you feel afterward. Over time, you'll notice patterns, like how exercising makes you more productive at work, or how meditating helps you sleep better. That awareness deepens the link between action and reward, reinforcing the habit. For the more tech-savvy, there are apps that let you track progress with graphs and streaks. Some people find it motivating to see charts climb upward, turning invisible progress into something tangible. The point isn't which method you use, the point is to make progress visible. Because when you see yourself winning, even in small ways, you naturally want to keep going. And here's something fascinating about tracking: it transforms the way you see setbacks. Without tracking, a missed day feels like total failure. But with tracking, you see it in context. You realize, hey, I've been consistent for 20 days and only missed one. That's still a 95% success rate. Instead of beating yourself up, you zoom out and see the bigger picture. That shift keeps you resilient. It keeps you moving forward instead of quitting. So let's put this all together. Imagine you want to transform your health. You start by choosing a keystone habit, say, daily walking. You decompose your goal into 20 minutes a day. You track it by marking your calendar with an X every time you complete it. Within weeks, you notice you're sleeping better. That inspires you to cook more meals at home. Cooking at home saves you money, which reduces stress. Reduced stress improves your relationships. And all of that started from one keystone habit, broken into small steps, tracked consistently. The beauty of this blueprint is that it's self-reinforcing. Keystone habits create momentum. Decomposition makes the mountain climbable. Tracking keeps the fire burning. Each element feeds the next, creating a cycle that becomes unstoppable over time. And here's the most empowering part: you don't need to wait for perfect conditions. You don't need to wait until you have everything figured out. You just need to choose one keystone habit, decompose it into a daily step, and track your progress. That's it. The rest unfolds naturally. Most people think success requires extraordinary discipline. But the truth is, it requires ordinary actions done with extraordinary consistency. And when you build your life around that truth, you stop chasing motivation. You stop waiting for a breakthrough. You start creating unstoppable progress, one small action at a time. Think about how this blueprint works in money. Most people approach their finances in bursts of guilt or inspiration. They decide one day to finally get serious about saving, so they cut everything, live super strict for a week or two, and then crash back into old habits. Why? Because they were trying to leap instead of step. But let's apply the blueprint. The keystone habit in money might be as simple as tracking where every dollar goes. Not even changing anything, just writing it down. That one action builds awareness, and awareness naturally shapes behavior. You start noticing wasteful spending, so you cut back. You see what you value, so you align your money with it. Without even forcing yourself to budget harder, the act of tracking reshapes your financial story. Goal decomposition makes it even more powerful. Instead of saying, I need $50,000 saved for retirement, which feels overwhelming, you say, I'll save $10 a day. $10 a day doesn't feel scary. But $10 a day over 30 years, invested wisely, grows into hundreds of thousands. The big number that once felt impossible becomes reachable through tiny, daily steps. And when you track your savings with a visual chart, watching it climb, even by inches, you get that satisfaction that keeps you moving forward. The same applies to relationships. People often think they need massive, sweeping gestures to improve their connections, grand vacations, perfect date nights, or deep, all-night conversations. And while those things can be wonderful, they're not what sustains love or friendship. It's the small, consistent actions. A keystone habit in relationships might be as simple as sending one thoughtful text a day. Or taking 3 minutes to really listen without interrupting. Or making a point to say thank you for the small things your partner does. Those small actions compound. One thank you turns into a climate of appreciation. One moment of listening turns into a culture of trust. One daily message builds a foundation of connection that withstands storms. Relationships rarely collapse overnight, they erode slowly through neglect. And they rarely heal overnight, they grow back through small, consistent care. If you decompose the goal of a strong relationship, it becomes daily microacts of kindness, patience, and gratitude. You track it not with charts, but with the atmosphere you feel at home, with the smiles you see, with the softness in how you speak to each other. That feedback loop is just as real as numbers on a page. And when you commit to it, those small acts transform the story of your relationships in ways that no grand gesture ever could. Now let's apply the blueprint to career and work. Many people look at successful entrepreneurs, leaders, or artists and think they got there by some huge stroke of genius or luck. But when you zoom in, you'll almost always find keystone habits behind their rise. The writer who publishes bestsellers? Their keystone habit is writing every morning, no matter what. The entrepreneur who builds a thriving business? Their keystone habit might be daily outreach, making one new connection every day. The athlete at the top of their field? Their keystone is showing up to train even on the days they don't feel like it. Once again, decomposition makes it manageable. Instead of build $1 million business, it becomes contact one potential customer a day. Instead of get a promotion, it becomes spend 15 minutes each morning improving a skill. Instead of become a thought leader, it becomes share one useful insight online every week. Each small step feels unimpressive in the moment, but strung together, they become unstoppable. And in careers, tracking is critical. Because often, growth at work is invisible until it suddenly explodes. You might be learning, practicing, connecting, and for months it feels like nothing is changing. But when you track the skills you've built, the projects you've completed, or the network you've grown, you see that progress is happening under the surface. Then, when the opportunity arrives, you're ready, and people call it an overnight success. But you know it was the compound effect of daily, tracked actions. Finally, let's talk about mindset and personal growth. This is the most subtle, but also the most powerful domain for the blueprint. Because your mindset is the soil in which every other part of life grows. A keystone habit for mindset might be 5 minutes of meditation. Just 5. Or writing down 3 things you're grateful for each night. Or asking yourself one reflective question at the end of the day, like, what did I learn today? Those small mental habits reshape the way your brain filters the world. Gratitude primes you to notice abundance instead of lack. Meditation trains you to respond with calm instead of reactivity. Reflection helps you spot growth instead of failure. And just like in other areas, the decomposition makes it stick. You're not aiming for enlightenment in a week, you're just sitting for 5 minutes today. You're not aiming to be perfectly positive, you're just writing 3 sentences tonight. Tracking in this area can be as simple as a journal. Over time, you'll flip back through the pages and realize your thinking has shifted. Or it can be noticing how you react differently to stressors that once knocked you down. That's progress. That's growth. But without tracking, it's easy to miss, and when you miss it, you underestimate yourself. Now imagine putting all of this together: money, relationships, career, mindset. Each one fueled by a keystone habit, each one broken into daily steps, each one tracked. The compound effect doesn't just transform a single area, it starts to reshape your whole life. You find yourself healthier, wealthier, more connected, more peaceful. And people around you will wonder how it happened. They'll think you must have discovered some big secret. But you'll know the truth, it wasn't one big thing. It was 1,000 small things done consistently, layered on top of each other until the weight of them tilted reality in your favor. And here's something beautiful: when you live this way, you become an example. Others watch you. Your children, your friends, your coworkers, they see the steady, quiet way you move forward. They see you saving, learning, caring, growing. And without you even trying to preach, you inspire them. Because consistency is contagious. Small actions ripple outward. And sometimes the greatest gift you give isn't the results you achieve, but the example you set of how to achieve them. So here's the truth about unstoppable progress: it doesn't look glamorous on the outside. It looks boring. It looks ordinary. It looks like making the bed, writing the page, sending the text, saving the dollar. But inside that ordinariness is magic. Because when you stack ordinary actions consistently, the extraordinary emerges. The blueprint works quietly at first, then all at once, until one day you realize you're living in a reality you once only dreamed of. When we talk about building habits, creating change, and laying down a blueprint for progress, it's easy to feel inspired in the beginning. The spark is real. The excitement is fresh. You tell yourself, this is it, this time I'm really going to do it. And for a while, you carry that energy. You wake up earlier, you put in the work, you feel proud of yourself. But then, as it always does, life shows up. The rush of the new wears off. The early excitement fades. Obstacles appear. You miss one day. Then 2. Suddenly the old routines are calling you back. And you realize, the hardest part isn't starting, it's sustaining. This is where most people give up. They think a setback means failure. They think missing a day means they've ruined everything. But sustaining momentum is about rewiring how you think about progress. It's about understanding that the long game is built on recovery, not perfection. You see, success doesn't belong to the person who never falls. It belongs to the person who learns how to get up quickly. The one who doesn't let a stumble become a spiral. Think about it like this: imagine a professional athlete. Even the best miss shots. Even the best drop the ball. Even the best have off days. What separates them isn't flawless performance, it's how fast they reset. They don't stand there in shock. They don't beat themselves up for hours. They shake it off, reset, and get back in the game. That's the mindset you need in life. Not perfection, but recovery. Not never falling, but falling forward. Here's a truth that might shock you. The difference between the average person and the high achiever isn't that the high achiever is wildly more disciplined. It's that they've mastered the art of restarting. They fail as often as anyone else, but they've trained themselves to shorten the gap between the stumble and the next step. If they miss a workout, they don't wait until next Monday to start again. They go tomorrow. If they overspend, they don't throw away the whole budget. They get back on track with the next dollar. If they break a promise to themselves, they don't spiral into shame. They make a new one and keep moving. The power is in the bounce back. And here's the thing, every time you recover quickly, you strengthen the muscle of resilience. You prove to yourself that a mistake doesn't have to define you. You create a new identity, not as someone who can't stick to it, but as someone who always returns. That identity is priceless. Because once you see yourself as the person who always comes back, setbacks lose their power. But sustaining momentum isn't just about how you handle setbacks. It's also about how you reward yourself. See, the human brain craves feedback. It craves acknowledgement. If you wait until the finish line to celebrate, you'll burn out long before you get there. That's why micro-wins are so important. Every time you complete a small step, you should recognize it. Not with arrogance, but with genuine appreciation. You showed up. You followed through. You moved forward. That matters. Think of a child learning to walk. We don't wait until they're sprinting across the yard to celebrate. We clap for every wobbly step. We cheer when they stand. We smile when they try. Why? Because we know those micro-wins matter. They're proof of progress. They're fuel to keep going. You deserve the same grace. Every small action you take deserves acknowledgement. Every box checked, every page written, every dollar saved, every moment resisted, you should count it as a victory. Because it is. And here's what happens when you celebrate micro-wins: you build a positive feedback loop. The brain starts associating effort with reward. You begin to enjoy the process itself, not just the outcome. That's the secret to intrinsic motivation, the kind that lasts. External rewards fade. Inspiration fades. But when the act itself feels rewarding, when progress feels satisfying, you no longer need willpower. You just need momentum. Now let's talk about the ripple effect. Because sustaining momentum isn't just about you. When you commit to small, consistent actions over the long game, the impact spreads further than you can imagine. People around you notice, even if they never say it. Your kids notice when you read every night instead of scrolling. Your coworkers notice when you show up early and prepared. Your friends notice when you start taking care of your health. And here's the beautiful part, your consistency gives others permission to believe. When they see you change, they start to believe they can change too. When they see you persist, they start to believe persistence works. You become proof. You become living evidence. And sometimes, without even realizing it, you become the reason someone else doesn't give up. You spark a chain reaction you'll never fully see. That's why the long game matters. It's not just about what you get. It's about who you become, and who you inspire along the way. The person who loses 50 pounds doesn't just gain health, they inspire their family to eat better. The entrepreneur who builds a business doesn't just gain freedom, they inspire their friends to chase dreams. The student who studies consistently doesn't just pass exams, they inspire classmates to work harder. Your progress is never isolated. It ripples outward. But let's be honest, the long game is not easy. There will be plateaus. There will be stretches where it feels like nothing is happening. You'll put in the work day after day, and the results will feel invisible. That's the moment where most people quit. But that's also the moment where real growth is happening beneath the surface. Just like a seed buried in the soil, nothing seems to change for a while. But roots are forming. Foundations are being laid. And then one day, a sprout breaks through. Suddenly the growth is visible. And everyone calls it sudden. But you know it wasn't. It was the long game finally revealing itself. That's why patience is your greatest weapon. You can't rush the compound effect. You can't microwave transformation. You can't force results on your timeline. What you can do is trust the process. Show up daily. Plant the seeds. Water them with effort. And wait with faith. Because the long game always pays off, just not always on your schedule. Let's take a real example, learning a new language. At first, progress is painfully slow. You learn a few words, a few phrases. You feel clumsy, you forget, you stumble. For months, it feels like you're not getting anywhere. But you keep practicing. You keep stacking those tiny sessions. And then, one day, you're in conversation and realize you understood a full sentence without translating in your head. Then another. Then you respond without thinking. Suddenly, the language clicks. Everyone else sees the breakthrough. But you know it wasn't sudden. It was the long game of small, daily steps. Or take fitness. At the start, it feels pointless. You lift the weights, and your body looks the same. You run the miles, and the scale barely moves. You meal prep, and the cravings scream louder than ever. Weeks pass with little visible change. But inside, the compound effect is working. Muscles are adapting. Metabolism is shifting. Discipline is being built. And then, almost out of nowhere, people start saying, "Wow, you look different." But you know it wasn't overnight. It was the long game. The same applies to money, relationships, careers, mindset, everything. The long game disguises progress in the beginning. It hides the reward to test your patience. But if you persist, it always reveals itself. The compound effect is unstoppable. It's math. It's nature. It's universal law. Small actions done consistently over time lead to exponential results. Period. So the question becomes, will you stick it out long enough to see it? Or will you quit in the quiet phase, when nothing seems to be happening? Because that's the only real difference between those who make it and those who don't. Not talent. Not luck. Not resources. Just endurance. The ability to keep going when results are invisible. That's why you must anchor yourself in identity, not outcomes. If your motivation depends only on results, you'll burn out during the quiet phase. But if your motivation comes from identity, I am the kind of person who shows up daily, no matter what, then results become inevitable. Because actions flow from identity. Once you see yourself as the person who plays the long game, the actions take care of themselves. And here's the final piece, gratitude for the process. Too many people treat the journey like a punishment, a chore to be endured until they arrive. But if you hate the process, you'll never sustain it. The secret is to fall in love with the daily steps themselves. To find joy in the workout, the writing, the learning, the saving. To recognize that the process is not the price you pay for the reward, the process is the reward. Because life isn't lived only in outcomes. It's lived in the steps. So embrace the setbacks as lessons. Celebrate the micro wins as victories. Trust the quiet phase as progress beneath the surface. Inspire others by living your consistency. And above all, commit to the long game. Because while the short game might give you quick dopamine hits, only the long game gives you transformation. Only the long game turns effort into legacy. You have everything you need to sustain momentum. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to move fast. You just need to keep showing up. Keep restarting. Keep stacking the small steps. Keep trusting the compound effect. And one day, you'll look back and realize that the long game has given you something far greater than you imagined, not just the results you wanted, but the person you became in the process. If small, consistent actions are so powerful, why do so many people resist them? Why do we dream about massive change, set big goals, and then struggle with the tiny steps that would actually get us there? On the surface, it doesn't make sense. You'd think the easier path would be attractive. You'd think people would jump at the chance to move forward one step at a time instead of chasing impossible leaps. But human nature isn't wired that way. Our brains crave big moments. We're addicted to the idea of breakthroughs, of overnight transformations, of instant results. And because of that wiring, we often overlook or even reject the very steps that would actually change everything. One of the biggest traps is the all-or-nothing mindset. You know the feeling, if I can't go all in, then why bother? If I can't eat perfectly clean, then I might as well eat whatever I want. If I can't do an hour-long workout, then I'll skip it entirely. If I can't save $500 a month, then I'll spend it all anyway. This mindset kills progress before it even starts. Because the truth is, small imperfect actions compound far faster than waiting for perfect conditions that never come. Yet most people wait. They convince themselves they'll start when life calms down, when motivation is high, when the stars align. And so they wait weeks, months, sometimes years, while opportunities slip away. Think about it this way, imagine two people. One decides to walk for 10 minutes a day. The other says, if I can't run for an hour, I won't bother. A year later, the walker has taken over 60 hours of steps. The other? Nothing. All-or-nothing thinking pretends to protect you from half measures, but really, it robs you of all progress. The key is realizing that something is always better than nothing. 10 minutes is infinitely better than zero. A single dollar saved is infinitely more powerful than none. The momentum you build from starting small matters more than the illusion of waiting for perfection. But why do we fall into this trap? Because we are addicted to instant gratification. Our brains are wired for the quick hit of reward. The dopamine rush of likes, clicks, sweets, and distractions. Long-term goals? They don't give us the same hit. Saving money doesn't feel as good in the moment as buying something right now. Saying no to dessert doesn't feel as good as indulging instantly. Studying tonight doesn't feel as fun as scrolling or binge-watching. The brain, left unchecked, always chooses the immediate over the delayed. It's not weakness, it's biology. The problem is, the life you want is built almost entirely on delayed rewards. Health, wealth, mastery, relationships, all of it comes from trading comfort now for fulfillment later. So how do you rewire the brain to value the future over the present? You train it. Just like a muscle. Every time you delay gratification, you're teaching your brain that the long-term matters. Every time you resist the urge for an immediate fix, you're building strength. At first, it feels painful. But over time, the future becomes more real, more vivid, more rewarding than the momentary high. This is why visualization is powerful. When you imagine your future self, when you bring that vision to life in your mind, you make the delayed reward feel immediate. Suddenly it's not abstract. It's not far away. It's you. And when you believe in that future version of yourself, the sacrifices of today stop feeling like losses and start feeling like investments. But there's another enemy, procrastination. Even when we know small actions matter, we push them off. I'll start tomorrow. I'll do it later. We convince ourselves we're just waiting for the right time, but really, procrastination is fear in disguise. Fear of failing. Fear of discomfort. Fear of what change might actually demand. So we delay. But here's the truth, action is the antidote to procrastination. The moment you take even the smallest step, the resistance shrinks. The hardest part of any habit is not doing it, it's starting it. Once you begin, momentum carries you. Which is why one of the most effective tools is called habit stacking. Habit stacking works like this: you attach a new behavior to an old one. You piggyback the new action onto something you already do every day. You brush your teeth, then meditate for 2 minutes. You brew coffee, then write one sentence. You come home from work, then immediately change into workout clothes. By stacking new habits onto old routines, you remove the friction of remembering or motivating yourself. The old habit becomes the trigger. Over time, the new action feels automatic, like second nature. You don't need willpower, you just need a stack. But habit stacking is only part of the solution. You also need to design your environment for success. Because here's the truth, willpower is overrated. You will never win by relying on raw discipline alone. The environment always wins. If the cookies are on the counter, you will eat them. If the phone is next to your bed, you will scroll. If the TV remote is within reach, you will turn it on. But if you design your environment carefully, progress becomes the default. Put healthy snacks at eye level, and you'll grab them more often. Leave your workout clothes out, and you'll exercise more. Place your phone in another room, and you'll read or rest instead. Change the environment, and you change the behavior. And here's the key insight: friction is the hidden force behind every habit. Make good habits easy, and you'll do them more. Make bad habits hard, and you'll do them less. Want to work out more? Lower the friction by prepping everything in advance. Want to spend less? Raise the friction by deleting payment info from apps. Want to scroll less? Raise the friction by uninstalling social media from your phone. Success isn't about more willpower, it's about less friction. Let's bring this together with a simple story. Imagine two people again. One keeps junk food in the pantry, keeps their phone in their hand, keeps their gym clothes buried in a drawer. They rely on discipline to fight temptation every day. The other clears the pantry, leaves their phone in another room, sets their gym clothes out the night before. Who do you think lasts longer? Not the one with more discipline, the one with less friction. Because environment quietly shapes behavior far more than effort. Now think about your own life. Where are you making progress harder than it has to be? Where are you leaving friction in place and then blaming yourself for not having the willpower to resist? You don't need to change your personality. You don't need to become superhuman. You need to design your surroundings so the right choice is the easy choice. And here's the final piece: compassion. Too many people carry shame around procrastination, around inconsistency, around giving in to instant gratification. They label themselves lazy, unmotivated, weak. But the truth is, these struggles are not personal flaws. They're human defaults. Everyone wrestles with them. The difference lies in awareness and strategy. Once you see the patterns, once you learn to lower friction, once you practice delaying gratification, once you break the all-or-nothing mindset, you gain control. You're no longer fighting yourself blindly. You're working with your brain, not against it. So the next time you feel the urge to wait for perfect conditions, remind yourself, perfection is the enemy of progress. The next time you crave an instant reward, remind yourself, you're building strength for the long game. The next time you catch yourself procrastinating, take one tiny action right then, just one. And the next time you blame yourself for not having willpower, look around and ask, how can I design this space so the right choice is easier? Because the friction isn't there to stop you. It's there to test you. To ask, how badly do you want it? Will you keep waiting for everything to line up, or will you create the conditions that make progress inevitable? The people who change their lives are not the ones who suddenly become perfect. They're the ones who learn to see through the tricks of their own brain. They're the ones who realize the small steps are everything. They're the ones who stop waiting and start stacking. The ones who shift their environment instead of blaming their willpower. And the ones who understand that resistance is not a wall, it's a doorway. Once you walk through it, the rest unfolds. So ask yourself, where have you been waiting for perfect conditions? Where have you been chasing instant gratification at the expense of your future? Where are you procrastinating on the very steps that would free you? And how can you stack a new action, shift your environment, or lower friction today to make progress unavoidable? Because once you do, you'll discover something extraordinary. The resistance that felt so strong, so immovable, so permanent, it was never real. It was only as strong as your belief in it. The moment you act, it crumbles. The moment you design for success, it becomes effortless. And that's when the small steps stop being battles and start being habits. That's when momentum takes over. That's when the long game truly begins. We've traveled far together on this journey. From the very first spark of small actions, to the long game of persistence, to the resistance you've learned to overcome, and to the blueprint that can carry you forward, everything has been building to this moment. And now, I want you to imagine something. Close your eyes for just a second, and picture the version of you who never gave up on the small things. The version of you who embraced the compound effect, who trusted the quiet phase, who stacked habits and designed environments and celebrated micro-wins. Picture that person, and realize this, it's not some distant dream. That version is you. Waiting. Waiting for you to finally decide that your future matters more than your excuses. Life is not changed in giant leaps, it is changed in the steps you repeat daily when no one is watching. The world is obsessed with the dramatic story, the before and after photos, the overnight success. But reality tells a different story. The overnight success took years of invisible effort. The transformation no one saw was built one action at a time. The people you admire did not find a shortcut. They found the courage to be consistent when it was boring, when it was quiet, when it felt like nothing was happening. And that's what separates dreamers from doers. Think back to your own life. How many times have you started and stopped? How many times have you told yourself you'll change, only to get pulled back into the old patterns? At some point, you have to decide, will I keep repeating the cycle of starting strong and quitting early, or will I finally commit to the small steps, the daily actions, the long game that actually creates transformation? Because the truth is, no one else can do it for you. Not your family, not your friends, not your mentors. They can inspire you, yes. They can guide you, yes. But at the end of the day, it's your choices, repeated over and over, that will shape your reality. And here's the most beautiful part, you don't need to do it all at once. You don't need to overhaul your entire life tomorrow. You just need one step. That's it. One action that aligns with who you want to become. Do it today. Do it tomorrow. Then do it again. And soon, the step becomes a habit. The habit becomes momentum. The momentum becomes identity. And once it's identity, you no longer have to push, it pulls you forward. You're not forcing change anymore. You're becoming change. So let me paint you a picture. Imagine a year from now. Imagine you decide today to take just one small action daily. Maybe it's reading 10 minutes a day. Maybe it's saving $5. Maybe it's writing a paragraph. Maybe it's walking around the block. Just one. Do you realize what that would become in a year? That's 60 hours of reading. That's over $1,800 saved. That's a full book written. That's hundreds of miles walked. All from one small action, compounded daily. And here's the kicker, those results won't just stay in one area of your life. They'll ripple. The reading expands your thinking. The savings give you confidence. The writing sharpens your voice. The walking boosts your health. Every small win spills over into other areas. And suddenly, your entire life looks different. Now imagine 5 years from now. Imagine 10. The small daily actions you choose now will either build a life you're proud of, or a life you regret. The compound effect doesn't care which direction it works in. If you choose the right habits, it will multiply your success. If you choose the wrong ones, it will multiply your struggle. That's the sobering truth. The compound effect is always working, whether for you or against you. The only question is, which side will you feed? And if you're thinking, but I've failed before. I've broken promises to myself too many times. I don't trust myself to follow through, listen closely. You are not broken. You are not doomed to repeat the past. Every single person who has ever achieved anything has failed along the way. Every single one. The difference is they learned to rise again. They stopped making failure their identity and started making resilience their practice. You can do the same. Starting today, you can decide that your past does not define you. Your next step defines you. You see, change isn't about becoming someone new. It's about uncovering who you've always been. Beneath the procrastination, beneath the fear, beneath the excuses, there's a part of you that knows you're capable of more. A part of you that is ready to fight for the future you deserve. And when you start showing up for that version of you, day after day, the world around you begins to shift. Opportunities appear. People respond differently. You carry yourself differently. And it all traces back to the smallest of steps. So the choice is in front of you now. Will you continue to wait for the perfect moment, for the grand transformation, for the instant fix that never arrives? Or will you take responsibility for the one thing you can control, what you choose to do today? Because today matters more than you realize. Today is the seed. Today is the foundation. Today is the compound effect beginning its quiet work. And I want you to remember this. Greatness doesn't feel like greatness while you're building it. It feels ordinary. It feels boring. It feels like brushing your teeth, like making your bed, like writing a single sentence, like choosing water over soda. But years later, those boring steps add up to something extraordinary. People will look at you and say, "Wow, you're so lucky. Wow, you changed so much." And you'll smile, because you'll know the truth, it wasn't luck. It wasn't magic. It was small, consistent actions, repeated daily, even when no one noticed. This is your invitation. Your call to stop waiting, to stop doubting, to stop chasing the illusion of overnight change. The power is already in your hands. In your choices. In your habits. In your willingness to play the long game. And if you choose consistency over perfection, resilience over shame, and identity over outcomes, you will build a life that not only surprises others, but surprises yourself. Because one day, you'll wake up and realize the gap between who you are and who you wanted to be has closed. You'll realize the person you dreamed of becoming is the person staring back at you in the mirror. And when that day comes, you'll know it wasn't a giant leap that got you there. It was every tiny step. Southwest, as we close this journey together, I'll leave you with this: the compound effect is already in motion. Every action is a seed. Every choice is a vote for the future you're creating. The question isn't whether it's working. The question is, will you work with it or against it? Decide now. Start today. Take the smallest step you can, and take it with faith. Because the hidden power of small, consistent actions isn't hidden at all. It's waiting in plain sight, in every moment, in every choice, in every breath. And if you dare to embrace it, there will come a day when you look back and realize the life you once thought impossible is the life you're living. And it all began with the choice you make right now. So what will it be?